Maybe if you tried a little harder with your appearance, people would take you more seriously. My mother-in-law said it while smiling over her wine glass. We were at my husband's company dinner. 20 people around a long table, soft music, expensive plates, quiet conversation, and suddenly everyone was looking at me. She tilted her head slightly. "Oh, relax," she added. "I'm just helping her improve." A few people laughed politely. I glanced at my husband. He shrugged. "Mom just likes to give feedback," he said. "Don't take it personally." I smiled. Because sometimes the easiest way to keep peace is pretending you didn't hear the insult. But that night wasn't the part that changed things. What happened later did. And if you enjoy calm stories where patience speaks louder than anger, consider subscribing. Most people who find these stories say they remind them of moments they lived through quietly. At that table, I kept my posture relaxed. I asked the waiter for water. I even thanked her for the advice. But something inside me shifted. Because that comment wasn't new, it was just the first time she said it in public. My mother-in-law had always had opinions about me, my cooking, my job, my clothes, little comments disguised as concern. "She's sweet," she'd say to relatives. But she could really take better care of herself. Or my favorite. "She's lucky my son is so patient." Each time it happened, my husband reacted the same way. He'd laugh softly, "Mom means well," or he'd say the line I heard most often, "Just ignore it." So I did. For months, maybe longer. Because reacting would make me look sensitive, and silence kept the room comfortable. But silence has a strange side effect. People start believing you agree. That dinner proved it. Later that night, while guests were finishing dessert, she leaned closer again. "I only say these things because I care," she whispered. I nodded, and that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't, because a week later something else happened, and this time it wasn't public. My husband and I shared a family group chat, just the three of us. Most days it was harmless, photos, recipes, holiday plans. Then one afternoon my phone buzzed, a new message from her, but instead of text, it was a voice note. 23 seconds long. At first I thought it was meant for us, so I pressed play, and what I heard made the room very quiet. Her voice was sharper than I'd ever heard. "Oh my God, I can't stand how she acts like she belongs in our family." There was a short laugh. "You should see how everyone notices it. She tries so hard. It's embarrassing I didn't move." The message continued. "I told you he could have done better." But now he's stuck. Then the audio ended. No explanation, no follow-up, just silence. And that's when I realized something important. That voice note wasn't meant for us. It was meant for someone else. But it landed in our shared thread by mistake. I stared at my phone for a long moment, not angry, just clear, because suddenly every comment made sense. But that wasn't the moment things changed. The real shift came from something much simpler. I didn't react, I didn't reply, I didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, I left the message exactly where it was, unread by my husband. For 3 hours, I went about my afternoon, folded laundry, answered emails, made dinner, all while that small audio file sat quietly in our chat, waiting. And here's the part I'm curious about. If you were in that position, would you have confronted her immediately, or would you have done what I did? Because sometimes timing matters more than words. Around 6 that evening, my husband texted, "Heading home." A few minutes later, the chat showed the tiny indicator, seen, then typing, then nothing. He listened to the voice note. I knew the moment it happened. Because 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally he sent one message. "What is this?" I didn't answer right away. I let him sit with it. 5 minutes later he called. His voice was quieter than usual. Did you hear it? Yes. Another pause. That wasn't meant for us, he said quickly. I know, but she didn't mean it like that. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply asked one question. Like what? He didn't answer, because the truth was already playing in his head. For the first time, he heard what I'd been hearing for months, except this time there was no polite smile covering it. That moment was the mini turning point, not a fight, just realization. But the real shift happened 2 days later, Sunday dinner. At her house, the same long table, the same polished dishes, and the same confident smile when she greeted us. Sweetheart, she said warmly to me, as if nothing had happened. My husband watched her for a moment. Then something subtle changed. During dinner, she made another comment, this time about my job. Oh, I just worry, she said. It's not the most stable career. Normally he would have laughed or told me to ignore it. Instead, he placed his fork down slowly. Mom. She looked up. Yes? I heard your voice note. The room went still. Her smile faltered slightly. What voice note? The one about my wife. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a response ready. Because polite criticism works best when it stays hidden behind smiles. But recordings don't smile. They repeat the truth exactly as it was said. She glanced at me quickly. Then back at him. That wasn't meant for you, I know, he said calmly, and somehow that made the silence heavier. No yelling, no dramatic confrontation, just awareness. After that night, something shifted quietly. The comments stopped, not instantly, but noticeably, and my husband started hearing things differently. Little phrases he once brushed off now sounded sharper. Reality tends to do that once you notice it. As for me, I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Because the goal was never revenge, it was clarity. And clarity is surprisingly powerful. Months later, our family dinners feel different, quieter, more respectful. Sometimes people ask if I regret not confronting her earlier. I usually smile. Because patience isn't weakness. Sometimes it's simply waiting for the truth to speak in its own voice. And when it finally does, people hear it very clearly. If you've ever stayed calm while someone misunderstood you, you probably know that feeling. Stories like this remind us that dignity often wins quietly. If this story resonated with you, you're always welcome here for more.